The engine number appeared only after Wade Hollis removed 3 layers of blue paint from a flat pad behind the fuel pump. 6 digits, a dash, and a hand-stamped letter D. His 16-year-old daughter Claire held the work light closer. The faded 1966 Ford F-100 had cost $400 at an estate auction 2 days earlier. Its bed still carried straw, the bench seat was split, the cab smelled of dirt and old oil, and the engine had arrived running on 7 cylinders with the dull knock of a loose rocker. None of that explained the plugged dry-sump fittings on the oil pan. None of it explained the cylinder heads built for high-speed endurance work. And no ordinary farm truck engine carried a number Wade remembered from a photograph in the Daytona Heritage Center. He read it again. "That isn't a truck number," he said. Claire looked toward the open shop door. "What kind is it?" Before Wade could answer, a black sport utility vehicle stopped outside Hollis Engine Service. Celeste Rowe stepped out with the estate auction manager and a lawyer. She was 51, chief executive of Rowe Collector Services, the company that had sold the truck. At the auction, she had laughed when Wade bid against the scrapyard and told the crowd he had paid $400 for an engine knock with a hay bed attached. Now she crossed the shop carrying the printed lot file. "Stop work," she said. The racing engine was not included in the sale. Wade rested both hands on the workbench. He was 59, an engine machinist with close gray hair, a damaged left shoulder, and 37 years of measuring metal in 10,000ths of an inch. He had raised Claire alone since her mother died when the girl was 9. Hollis Engine Service occupied an old block building outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, where Wade rebuilt industrial engines, classic V8s, and whatever local racers trusted him to save. He pointed to the paid invoice clipped above the bench. "You sold a complete truck with installed engine." Celeste's lawyer, Andrew Pike, read from the auction terms. "The company reserved all undocumented competition components." "Show me where that term appears on lot 112. Andrew could not. The reservation applied to boxed parts inside the collector's warehouse. The truck was sold outside with farm equipment, as is, drivetrain included. Celeste looked at the stripped number pad. "You concealed that marking during inspection." Wade turned Claire's camera toward her. They had recorded the oil pan removal from the moment the truck entered the bay. The number remained under old paint until Wade used solvent and a plastic scraper. No grinder, stamp, or replacement part appeared. "I exposed it," Wade said. "Your company covered it before I owned the truck." The distinction changed Celeste's expression. She demanded that Wade surrender the engine while ownership was reviewed. He refused to let anyone remove it without a court order or a jointly signed preservation plan. Then he did something that cost him more than the truck. He stopped the rebuild, sealed the engine bay, and canceled 2 customer jobs that needed his only heavy stand. At 9:35 that morning, the $400 farm truck became the most expensive machine in his shop. 2 days earlier, it had been the least respected lot in the Quinn sale. Rowe Collector Services arranged restored sports cars inside a heated warehouse and farm equipment outside along the fence. Collectors arrived for a European coupe, 2 American muscle cars, and shelves of racing memorabilia. The F-100 sat beyond the bidder tent with its hood open because the battery had to be jumped before sale. Wade had come looking for a parts washer. Claire came because summer break had begun, and she wanted driving practice on the way home. They heard the truck before they saw it. 1 cylinder missed at idle, but the lower end held steady oil pressure and no deep bearing noise. Wade looked beneath the hood for 4 minutes. The block had no obvious factory color. Someone had painted everything truck blue, including the aluminum intake and edges of the cylinder heads. The upper radiator hose had been adapted. 2 capped fittings sat low on the pan, and the left exhaust manifold had been relieved by hand to clear the steering box. He did not see the number pad. Grease and paint covered it. The auctioneer opened at $800 and received no bid. He dropped to $500, then $300. A scrapyard buyer raised his card. Wade raised at $400. The scrapyard stopped. Celeste was standing near the warehouse doors with 3 clients. She asked Wade whether he planned to machine the knock out of the engine or feed the remaining hay to it. People laughed because the sale had been long and they were waiting for more important cars. Wade answered that he planned to test oil pressure hot. It was not a good comeback. It was the actual next step. The auctioneer declared the truck sold. An employee completed the paid invoice and gave Claire the keys. Before loading, she photographed the engine because her father had taught her to document any machine bought as is. One image caught Celeste's junior appraiser in the background holding a clipboard beside the open hood. That image later placed the company, the engine, and the visible dry sump caps in the same frame. Wade intended to use the F-100 as a shop truck if the engine survived. Hollis Engine Service had a newer pickup financed for another 2 years. Selling it and using the old Ford could free $600 a month. The plan was modest and reasonable. The hidden engine did not arrive as a reward for genius. It interrupted a plan that might have helped. Wade's shop operated on narrow margins because he refused to sell rebuilds a customer did not need. That policy built trust and limited growth. His 3 employees earned steady wages, but Wade paid himself last. Claire's college account held enough for 1 year at a state school. The roof leaked over the parts room, and a tarp above the crank grinder had become a permanent feature. His left shoulder had been injured when an engine hoist shifted 7 years earlier. Ellen was still alive then. She made him complete physical therapy and installed a rule that no one lifted a cast iron head alone. After she died, the rule remained on the shop wall in her handwriting. Claire kept a photograph of the rule on her phone. Whenever Wade tried to ignore it, she held up the screen. The $400 truck could have reduced a payment. Instead, the sealed bay eliminated almost a third of the shop's working floor and placed Wade inside a dispute with a company whose legal budget exceeded his annual revenue. The number Wade remembered belonged to the reserve engine from the fictional Falcon Ridge Special, an American endurance car that won the 1967 Daytona 24-hour race after its primary engine failed in practice. Official team records said the winning engine was destroyed with other experimental hardware in 1970. The race car survived and sat in the Daytona Heritage Center without its original power unit. Wade had seen the number 5 years earlier during a machinist seminar. An archive photograph showed the engine on a stand after the race. The pad was partly obscured, but the final letter D and the angle of the 3rd digit were distinctive. Memory was not proof. He called Naomi Brooks, an attorney who represented independent repair shops, and told her every fact, including the possibility that he had recognized racing parts before buying. "What did you know at the auction?" she asked. "The heads were wrong for a truck. I saw one plugged oil fitting. I thought it might be an old stock car motor." "Did you tell them?" "No." "Did they allow inspection?" "The hood was open." Naomi was quiet. A buyer usually doesn't owe a seller an appraisal. But if they claim you hid a known identity, your timeline matters. Preserve everything from before the sale. Claire had already saved the auction live stream. It showed the hood open, the engine installed, and Celeste standing beside the truck while the auctioneer described it as complete. An inspection video made by Row Collector Services 2 weeks earlier showed an employee starting the same engine. The painted number pad and plugged fittings were visible. Wade copied both recordings to separate drives and placed the solvent-soaked paint flakes in labeled envelopes. He documented the cylinder head casting numbers, oil fittings, intake, block date, and a repaired weld near the bell housing. Then he covered the truck and did nothing more. Doing nothing required more discipline than disassembly. Wade normally answered uncertainty by measuring it. Now, every bolt he touched could be described as evidence altered after notice. Naomi arranged a preservation protocol. Claire drew a grid of the engine bay and assigned each seal a number. Red tamper tape crossed the valve covers, intake, pan bolts, bell housing, and distributor clamp. A notary photographed the seals. Celeste's mechanic, Owen Fitch, verified the engine could not be removed without breaking at least 6. Owen was an experienced appraiser who had joined Row after the Quinn catalog was finished. He disliked being used as a witness in a mistake he had not made, but he took the work seriously. "Those heads are competition pieces," he said. "How old?" Wade asked. "Correct, period. Could have been sold over a parts counter after a team closed." That alternative went into the ledger. Owen also noticed the engine sat 1 inch farther back than a standard truck installation. Lester had fabricated mounts that used existing frame holes wherever possible. The crossmember modification was rougher than race shop work, but showed the same practical restraint as the repaired engine mount. Whoever installed it wanted the truck serviceable, not impressive. They sampled oil through the dipstick tube without breaking seals. Laboratory analysis found a high zinc formulation and trace lead consistent with old racing bearings, but the oil had been changed recently enough that it proved nothing about 1,967. Wade marked the result inconclusive. Claire asked why they kept weak evidence. because throwing it away would make the file look cleaner than the machine. She added a gray tab labeled "Does not prove." "How do we prove where it came from?" Claire asked. "First, we prove where the truck came from." The estate belonged to Lester Quinn, a mechanic who died at 84 after living alone on a small farm near Sanford. He had worked for race teams in the 60s and 70s, then spent 40 years repairing tractors and school buses. His daughter, Margaret Quinn, hired row collector services to clear the property. The catalog treated the F-100 as farm transportation and valued it below $800. Wade wrote to Margaret through the estate attorney. He did not ask for the engine. He asked whether her father had records explaining it. Celeste objected, saying contact with the family could interfere with the auction contract. Naomi answered that a lawful buyer could request provenance. Margaret agreed to speak with both parties present. They met at the farmhouse the next Tuesday. Margaret was 62, a retired nurse with her father's direct gaze and no patience for rich car theater. She said Lester bought the truck used in 1971 and drove it until 2 months before his death. He hauled fence posts, feed, lawnmowers, and once an injured calf in the bed. Margaret learned to drive in it. "Did he ever say the engine came from racing?" Wade asked. "He said it was too good to throw away." Celeste leaned forward. "Those exact words?" Margaret looked at her. "I don't improve my father's sentences." She brought out a coffee tin containing truck registrations, repair receipts, and oil change notes. The engine number did not appear. One receipt from March 1971 listed new motor mounts, a larger radiator, and fabrication of a shallow front crossmember. The work was performed by Lester himself. Margaret also had an unopened envelope addressed in her father's handwriting. For Margaret, if anyone asks about the Ford motor, she had found it after the auction but assumed it referred to routine repairs. Naomi stopped the meeting before the envelope was opened. She asked Margaret to give it to the estate attorney, who would scan it under a joint record and retain the original. Celeste's lawyer agreed. The letter did not transfer ownership or confess theft. It explained a choice. In 1970, Falcon Ridge Engineering ordered Lester and 2 other mechanics to destroy prototype engine parts after the racing program closed. Most components were cut or crushed under supervision. The Daytona reserve engine had a cracked external mount, but an undamaged block. Lester believed destroying it served no safety, secrecy, or competitive purpose. His supervisor, team engineer Paul Tress, signed a disposal sheet allowing employee removal of condemned ferrous assembly for personal scrap. Lester took the engine home as scrap, repaired the mount, detuned it, plugged the dry-sump system, and installed it in the F-100. He wrote that he had never sold it because separating the engine from the truck would turn a saved machine into a commodity. The Ford was the reason the engine survived ordinary life rather than attracting attention. Attached to the letter was a carbon copy of the disposal sheet bearing Paul Tress's signature. Lester's letter also described the truck installation in plain terms. The racing intake made too much power for farm use, so he changed the carburetion, limited ignition advance, and lowered the engine's operating speed. He retained the special heads because replacing them would require different pistons. He installed a wet sump pickup while leaving the dry sump fittings capped in case a later owner understood what they were. He warned Margaret that the engine should not be restarted after long storage without priming the oil system. That warning explained why the truck ran poorly at auction without turning the letter into a treasure map. At the bottom, Lester wrote that saving the engine had not made him its hero. Paul Tress signed the release. 2 co-workers helped load it. Margaret tolerated a truck that dripped on her mother's driveway. Survival was a chain of ordinary permissions and inconveniences. Wade liked that sentence because it reduced the temptation to build the story around one exceptional man. He asked Margaret whether it could appear in any future exhibit. She had not agreed there would be an exhibit, but she said yes. Celeste challenged the document. A carbon copy could be fabricated. The wording "personal scrap" might cover metal value, not an intact competition engine. The estate might still own it if Lester exceeded permission. Those were credible questions. Wade did not answer them with belief. Naomi requested personnel records, signature samples, and the original destruction ledger from the Falcon Ridge archive. The archive belonged to a foundation that licensed the racing name and supplied materials to the Daytona Heritage Center. Its director agreed to a neutral review because the engine could affect an existing exhibit. Celeste proposed removing the engine to a collector car laboratory. Wade refused because separating it would erase installation evidence. He offered full inspection with the engine remaining in the truck. The foundation selected Dr. Eugene Carter, an endurance engine historian and former foundry engineer. Eugene began with the parts that could not be seen in photographs. The block casting contained extra nickel. The main bearing webs had been machined for endurance oiling. The cylinder heads carried hand-shaped coolant passages. A production truck engine could be modified in similar ways, but the combination matched Falcon Ridge specifications. The foundation provided 4 comparison engines, 2 production truck blocks, 1 later stock car engine, and 1 documented Falcon Ridge development block. Eugene examined them under the same procedure. The goal was not to collect similarities from a single target. It was to identify which features actually distinguished the program. Extra nickel appeared in 1 production block, so that clue lost weight. Hand-shaped coolant passages appeared in the stock car heads, so those were not unique either. The main web oiling geometry and rear drain angle appeared only in the Falcon Ridge block and Wade's engine. Eugene explained the difference to Claire. A rare feature can be impressive and useless. A diagnostic feature separates one group from another. She changed 2 green tabs in the ledger to yellow. The crankshaft carried small drilled plugs in its counterweights. Falcon Ridge used them to adjust balance after long dyno runs. Their positions on Wade's crank matched an archive balance card within 2 degrees. The card had been filed under supplier data, not public race records. Celeste's lawyer asked whether Wade could have accessed it before the inspection. The foundation documented that the box had remained uncatalogued until staff opened it during the current review. Even Eugene had not seen the card. That was the kind of independent check Wade trusted. The repaired external mount interested him most. Archive notes described a crack caused when the reserve engine slipped from a dolly before Daytona practice. Lester Quinn was named as the mechanic who welded it. The repair on Wade's engine showed a short root pass, 2 cap passes, and a crescent-shaped stop where the welder repositioned his torch. The archive held a photograph taken minutes after the accident. The crescent stop was visible. Eugene still did not authenticate the engine. He needed internal measurements, which required partial disassembly. Wade agreed only after every fastener was photographed, and both parties signed the procedure. The engine remained above the truck's frame on a support fixture, while the oil pan and 1 head were removed. Inside the block, Eugene found a hand-drilled return passage at 17 degrees, a forged crank with a non-standard oil hole, and a small repair weld at the rear main web. Falcon Ridge's 1,967 dyno sheet listed all 3. The bore dimensions also matched the post-race rebuild record. Then they found a problem. The serial pad showed signs of an old restamp. Under oblique light, faint earlier digits lay beneath the visible number. Celeste's lawyer said the engine had been renumbered and could not be trusted. Eugene agreed that the visible number alone was unreliable. Wade felt Claire watching him. For 2 weeks, every strong clue had moved in one direction. This one did not. He added it to the objection column in their evidence ledger. The archive explained it 3 days later. Falcon Ridge assigned the reserve engine a shop number before Daytona, then overstamped it with the competition control number when it replaced the failed primary unit. The dyno sheet recorded both numbers. The faint digits matched the shop number. The apparent flaw became independent confirmation because Wade had not known an earlier number existed. The inspection also explained the engine's auction miss. A loose rocker caused the uneven idle, not internal failure. The noise Celeste joked about came from a worn adjusting nut worth less than $20. Wade could have corrected it in minutes, but the preservation order kept the valve train untouched until Eugene recorded the condition. Owen Fitch studied the rocker and shook his head. If the junior appraiser had pulled one cover, we might have flagged the heads. Celeste answered, if every estate received unlimited inspection, none would close. This didn't need unlimited. The criticism came from her own employee. Celeste did not punish him for it. She asked him to write what minimum check would have caught the issue. Owen proposed a 15-minute non-standard component screen for any complete vehicle older than 1,980. That recommendation later became the foundation of Rowe's policy. Rowe Collector Services changed its claim. It no longer argued the engine was ordinary. It argued the engine had never been part of the truck sale, because its historical identity made it a separate collectible asset. Naomi answered with the invoice, inspection video, and state law governing fixtures and installed vehicle components. The engine was bolted into the truck, used as its power unit for 55 years, described within a complete drivetrain, and conveyed without reservation. Historical importance did not make it legally detachable after payment. Celeste offered Wade $200,000 for the engine. Her company would leave him the truck and install a rebuilt period-correct V8 at no charge. Wade declined. She increased the offer to $450,000. The shop roof needed replacement. Claire wanted to study mechanical engineering. Wade's left shoulder would not tolerate heavy machining forever. The offer could solve every visible problem. He asked one question: where will the engine go? Celeste had a buyer in Europe who owned a collection of endurance engines. The block would be displayed on a stand. The F-100 would remain with Wade as an interesting footnote. Then no. Celeste stared at him. The race car made that engine important. The truck is farm equipment. The truck kept it from the furnace. You're confusing sentiment with value. You're separating value from the reason it exists. Wade proposed a joint museum loan keeping truck and engine together until title and authentication were complete. Celeste rejected it. Her company's commission depended on recovering value for the estate, and a private buyer was prepared to pay quickly. Margaret Quinn complicated that motive. She told Celeste she did not want the engine removed. If the estate had any claim, she wanted the Ford preserved as her father left it. Row Collector Services was supposed to act for the estate, not against the family's stated interest. Celeste argued that fiduciary duty required maximizing return. Margaret answered that the truck had already been sold and that spending estate money to reverse her father's documented choice did not maximize anything. The disagreement reached Row's board. Celeste had built the company by finding overlooked value in collections. Her compensation and reputation depended on not letting a seven-figure asset leave for $400. She believed accepting the sale would encourage buyers to exploit catalog errors. She also had an accurate criticism of Wade. He had suspected a competition engine before bidding and paid the minimum without sharing that suspicion. At a recorded mediation, Celeste asked him directly whether he would have bid more if someone else recognized the fittings. Yes, Wade said. How much? As much as I could borrow. Then you knew we were making a mistake. I knew your description might be incomplete. I didn't know the engine's identity. Your hood was open. Your inspection video showed the same parts. The mediator explained the difference between unequal knowledge and concealment. Wade used lawful expertise in an open inspection. Rowe possessed the truck, controlled the catalog, and had the opportunity to examine it. No evidence showed Wade misrepresented or interfered with the sale. Celeste could still litigate mutual mistake. Doing so would freeze the engine, cost the estate money, and place the company's internal review process under discovery. The mediation ended without agreement. Naomi told Wade that a judge could still surprise them. Law did not reward the morally satisfying party by instinct. Mutual mistake cases turned on contract language, allocation of risk, and what each side knew. Your strongest fact is not that the engine is important, she said. It's that they sold an installed power unit as part of a complete vehicle and chose an as-is sale after their own inspection. What's our weakest? You saw enough to suspect value and said nothing. Wade did not argue. At the next mediation session, he offered a compromise that would test both parties' stated principles. If the court found the engine excluded, he would return the entire truck, not keep the shell. If the court found the sale complete, Rowe would stop seeking separation. Either way, truck and engine remained together until a preservation buyer was chosen. Celeste rejected the condition because the estate might recover more by separating them. Her answer clarified that the dispute had moved beyond correcting a mistaken sale. It was now about maximizing a component. Margaret heard the exchange. She asked Celeste whether Rowe's commission increased with recovered value. The contract paid a percentage on additional estate proceeds after litigation costs. Celeste disclosed it. Then your company benefits from telling me fiduciary duty requires the same result that pays you, Margaret said. Celeste's face tightened. The conflict is disclosed in your agreement. Disclosed isn't the same as wise. Margaret asked the estate attorney to review whether Rowe should continue directing the claim. From then on, the estate made decisions through independent counsel. Celeste retained authority for her company's own contractual position, but she no longer spoke as if company and family interests were identical. 2 days later, an anonymous post accused Wade of stealing a Daytona engine from an elderly woman's estate. Local customers canceled 3 rebuilds. Someone painted thief across the shop door overnight. Claire found it first. Wade wanted to clean it before she saw. Instead, he handed her solvent and worked beside her in silence. The red paint dissolved slowly, leaving a shadow in the old white door. Naomi traced the post to no confirmed source. Celeste denied authorizing it and ordered her employees not to discuss the case online. Wade believed her. A collector who heard private sale rumors could have made the accusation. Blaming Celeste without proof would violate the standard he demanded from her. Still, the damage was real. Wade took a contract machining industrial pump housings at night to cover payroll. His shoulder worsened. A doctor told him continued overhead lifting could require surgery. The first canceled customer, a dentist with a restored convertible, returned after reading Naomi's evidence summary. The second did not. The third called Wade and said he believed him but did not want his car photographed near a controversial shop. Wade learned that reputation did not return as a crowd. It returned one person at a time, and some people preferred safety to fairness. His employees responded differently. Curtis Lane, the youngest machinist, removed the online reviews from the breakroom computer so the crew would stop checking them between jobs. May Holloway, who ran parts and scheduling, created a customer packet with the invoice, Rose inspection still, and the neutral preservation order. "No speeches," she said. "If they ask, hand them paper." The packet helped. 2 diesel contractors brought work after hearing the shop had lost customers. Neither cared about collector politics. They cared that Wade met tolerances and delivered on Tuesday. Claire worked the front desk after school but kept her summer program enrollment. She learned to answer calls without defending the entire case. The engine is under neutral review. The truck was purchased with a complete drivetrain. We're following the court process. Then she asked what the customer needed machined. That sentence sounded stronger than anger, because it left room for facts. Claire offered to leave her summer engineering program and work full-time at the shop. Wade said no. "You need help. I need you to go. That engine could pay for school. So can work and scholarships. Not if the shop closes." Wade looked at the truck under its evidence cover. His refusal had become a burden his daughter was trying to carry. Protecting history did not give him the right to spend her future without discussion. He told Claire the full numbers: cash reserve, canceled work, legal cost, roof estimate, and surgery risk. Then he gave her a vote on the $450,000 offer. She asked whether the buyer would display Lester Quinn's letter. "No guarantee." "Would the engine stay in the truck?" "No." "Then I vote no. But you have to stop pretending the shop can absorb anything." Claire proposed contacting the Daytona Heritage Center before the case ended, not for authentication but for a preservation agreement. If the center committed to house the complete truck and engine, Wade could show lenders and customers a responsible plan. The museum already displayed the empty Falcon Ridge Special. Reuniting it with the engine in the vehicle that saved it could be more valuable than a bare block. Wade had avoided approaching the museum because he did not want an impressive institution to replace evidence. Claire's proposal used the institution as consequence, not proof. He agreed. The center offered temporary secure storage and a public research review at its annual Heritage Weekend, contingent on court approval and neutral transport. The engine would remain installed. Margaret, Celeste, Eugene, and the Foundation Archive would participate. Both ownership positions would be acknowledged until resolution. Wade made the midpoint choice that hurt most. He moved the truck out of his shop and surrendered the keys to the court-appointed conservator. Without the truck, he lost control of the object and the public image attached to it. In return, he gained proper security, climate control, and a path to transparent proof. The move happened at dawn to avoid spectators. A bonded transporter backed into the alley. Naomi, Owen, Margaret, and the court conservator checked every seal. Claire read the numbers aloud while Wade compared them with the original grid. Before the Ford entered the enclosed trailer, Wade opened the driver's door one last time. The cab still held Lester's work gloves beneath the seat and a grocery receipt from the final month of his life. Those items were not part of engine authentication, but Margaret wanted them to remain until documented. Wade placed the key in a tamper bag and signed across the seal. Handing it to the conservator felt more serious than accepting it at auction. Ownership gave him the right to hold the truck. Stewardship required knowing when not to. When the transporter left, Claire noticed a clean rectangle where the Ford's tires had protected the shop floor from dust. "Looks like we sold it," she said. "We didn't. Doesn't feel different." Wade understood. He had focused on material safety and underestimated what the truck had become in their daily life. Father and daughter had spent a month building evidence around it. Its absence removed their shared problem as surely as it freed the bay. They used the empty space to finish a school bus engine for the county. Claire measured bearing clearances while Wade recorded them. The work was ordinary, paid, and necessary. It reminded them that the disputed engine was not the only machine whose survival mattered. The empty bay allowed customer work to resume. Wade removed the painted shadow from the door but left a small red line at the bottom. He wanted to remember that reputation could be marked before facts arrived. Discovery produced the document that shifted the company's position. Row Collector Services had an internal inspection memo written 10 days before the auction. A junior appraiser noted possible competition heads, unusual oil system, research if time permits. His supervisor closed the note because the estate deadline prioritized titled collector cars, and the truck's expected value did not justify specialist hours. The memo proved the company had suspected the engine and deliberately chosen not to investigate. Its mistake was a business decision, not information hidden by Wade. The junior appraiser who wrote it was 27-year-old Leah Moss. Discovery required her deposition. Celeste's lawyer could have attacked her judgment to protect the company. Instead, Celeste instructed him to ask what happened. Leah testified that she had photographed the oil fittings, searched one casting number, and found references to competition use. Her supervisor told her to close the note because 2 senior appraisers were occupied with the warehouse cars and the auction date could not move. She did not believe the engine was a Daytona winner. She believed it deserved 15 more minutes. Celeste asked why Leah had not escalated directly. Because the system showed my supervisor had closed it, Leah said. I thought closed meant decided. That sentence reached beyond one truck. Row's process recorded who opened a concern but not the reason someone closed it. A manager could turn uncertainty into certainty with one click and no explanation. Celeste ordered an immediate change before the dispute settled. Every closed research flag required a written reason visible to the person who raised it. Leah was invited to help test the new workflow. Wade learned about the change from Naomi. It did not repair the sale or accusation, but it showed Celeste was capable of correcting something before a court forced her. Naomi sent the memo, inspection video, and invoice to the estate court. Margaret joined the request for summary judgment confirming the sale. Faced with its own record, Row's errors insurer advised settlement. Celeste had one more chance to correct course before a public ruling. She could release the claim, reimburse preservation costs, and make clear that Wade had not concealed the engine. In return, Wade would not seek punitive damages and would acknowledge that the catalog error was negligent, not fraudulent. She asked for 48 hours. During those hours, Celeste visited the Daytona Heritage Center alone. The Falcon Ridge Special sat in the main gallery with an empty engine bay. Its panel said the winning power unit had been destroyed in 1970. Across the building, the farm truck waited under conservation lights, straw still caught between boards in its bed. She read Lester's letter twice. The museum curator showed her the underside of the Ford. Lester's fabricated mounts were not elegant. One gusset carried a torch cut that wandered at the corner. A modern restoration shop would replace them. Eugene planned to retain them because they demonstrated how the race engine became a working engine. The car is the glamorous half, Celeste said. That's why the truck is useful, the curator replied. It explains what glamour leaves out. Celeste had spent her career turning neglected objects into market categories. She was good at finding value after other people failed. Wade had done the same thing, and she had treated his skill as an attack because it operated outside her company. She also saw the danger of making him morally perfect. Wade had taken advantage of an open auction and hoped the engine was special. That was allowed. The company's responsibility was not to demand buyers stop knowing more. It was to build a process that did not confuse speed with certainty. The next morning, Row Collector Services released its claim. The estate court entered an agreed order confirming Wade's title to the complete truck and installed engine. Row's insurer paid reasonable legal and preservation expenses. The company issued a statement that its own pre-auction memo had identified unusual engine features and that Wade had acted lawfully throughout the sale. The statement did not restore every customer. It gave him something he could hand to the ones willing to read. Authentication remained unfinished. Eugene had verified the engine's construction and numbers, but the foundation wanted confirmation that it was the unit that powered the final winning hours at Daytona, not merely a reserve from the same program. The answer lay in a defect. Archive lap reports recorded rising oil temperature after midnight. At 3:12 in the morning, Lester changed a scavenge line fitting during a pit stop. The replacement had a slightly smaller internal diameter. Later dyno tests showed a distinctive pressure pulse at high speed. The winning engine's rear oil passage was reamed by hand the next day to correct the restriction. Eugene used a flexible scanner through the plugged dry-sump port. The rear passage carried the hand-reamed taper. Its tool marks matched a reamer found in Lester's estate, a tool Margaret had nearly donated with ordinary equipment. More important, Claire found a grease pencil notation on the inside of the truck's glove box door. Rear return opened. 018, after Daytona. Lester had written the same figure on the post-race dyno sheet. The truck had served as his private service record. At Heritage Weekend, the F-100 entered the main hall under its own weight on wheel dollies. Wade refused to wash away the farm dust trapped beneath the bed rails. The hood remained open. Beside it stood the silver Falcon Ridge Special. The center divided the review into ownership, identity, and meaning. Naomi handled ownership with 5 documents and no adjectives. Margaret's father received the engine as condemned scrap under a signed disposal sheet. Lester installed it in the titled truck. His estate conveyed the complete vehicle to Roe's auction. Roe sold it to Wade with the drivetrain included. The agreed court order confirmed the chain. Eugene handled identity. Claire advanced each image from a control table. She showed the archive balance card before the crankshaft scan, the accident photograph before the repaired mount, and the 2 serial numbers before the overstamped pad. No clue appeared without its counterclaim and answer. For meaning, Margaret read only the paragraph of Lester's letter, explaining why he kept the engine in the Ford. She did not read private family lines. Saving history did not entitle the public to every part of a person. The audience included former racers who wanted the engine restored to full output. Eugene explained that doing so would replace truck-era changes and add stress. The museum could demonstrate internal design through scans and run a separate period engine for sound. Conservation did not require making Lester's saved block perform for spectators. The public review began with the disposal chain. The foundation displayed the original 1,970 ledger, Paul Tress's signature-matched personnel files, and the carbon copy in Lester's letter. The phrase "employee removal of condemned ferrous assembly" appeared beside the engine's shop number. A surviving payroll record showed Lester paid scrap value through a deduction from his final check. He had not stolen it. The company had transferred it as condemned material. Eugene presented the casting, machining, repaired mount, double number, internal oiling, post-race bore dimensions, and hand-reamed rear passage. Each clue connected to a dated, independent record. The foundation authenticated the engine as the power unit installed before the 1967 race and used through the Falcon Ridge Special's Daytona victory. Celeste stood with Roe's board chair near the back. She did not challenge the finding. When reporters asked about the auction, she repeated that Wade had bought the complete truck lawfully and that her company's process had failed. The concrete consequence followed. The Daytona Heritage Center removed the old destroyed in 1,970 panel. In its place, it installed a temporary exhibit titled "The Engine That Went to Work." The panel did not begin with value. It began with Lester Quinn's disposal assignment, his signed permission, and 5 decades of farm use. Margaret placed her father's worn truck key in the display case. Claire placed a copy of the glove box notation beside it. The center's acquisition committee offered $65 million for the truck and engine together, subject to an independent insurer's valuation between $1.5 and $1.9 million. It also offered Wade a paid 2-year role supervising mechanical conservation and oral history collection. The agreement prohibited separating the engine except for necessary conservation, and any removal had to be displayed as part of the truck's documented story. A private collector offered $2 million for the engine alone. The collector's proposal was professionally written. It promised climate control, expert rebuilding, and annual public exhibition. It was not the plan of a careless villain. A bare competition engine could be inspected more easily and might teach specialists more about Falcon Ridge design. Wade asked whether the truck would be displayed nearby. The collector offered to purchase it separately for $60,000, restore it to factory pickup specification, and mention Lester on a plaque. The offer treated both objects well, and their relationship as optional. That made the choice harder. Wade could not reject it merely because the buyer lacked respect. He had to decide whether relationship itself carried historical value. A conservation report prepared for the center found that the installed mounts, modified cooling, plugged dry-sump fittings, detuned intake, glove box note, and decades of registrations formed one continuous survival record. Separating the engine would preserve two objects and destroy one context. Wade met with Claire and Margaret in the museum workshop. The private offer was higher. It could secure the shop without a loan, pay for surgery, and leave Claire free of education debt. Margaret did not tell him what her father would have wanted. He made his choice, she said. You have to make yours. Claire walked around the Ford. Its fenders were dented. The blue paint had faded to gray on the roof. A clean circle on the windshield marked where an old farm permit had once been. If we sell just the engine, she said, what happens to the truck? We keep it. Without the reason anyone kept it. Wade understood. The race car made the engine famous. The old mechanic and the farm truck were the reason it survived. Remove one from the other, and the ending would repeat the same error as the original destruction order. Keep only what looked valuable at the time. He accepted the museum's lower offer. The money repaired the shop roof, paid for Wade's shoulder surgery, funded Claire's engineering education, and created an apprenticeship at Hollis Engine Service named for Lester Quinn. Wade did not retire. He reduced heavy work and trained two younger machinists to handle it. Row Collector Services changed its auction procedure. Any vehicle showing non-standard castings, oil systems, frame modifications, or competition markings required a second review before sale. Junior appraisers could not have research flags closed solely for schedule. Celeste attached her own name to the policy. 6 months later, she brought Wade the original internal memo. This is the paper I wish I had read. Wade scanned it for the archive and returned the original. Reading it now still counts. Not the same way. No, they did not become friends. They became two people capable of naming the point where one had been wrong. Conservation kept the F-100 recognizable. The museum rebuilt the brakes, stabilized the body, repaired the seat, and cleaned the engine internally. It did not repaint the truck. The straw in the bed was documented and removed except for a small sealed sample. Lester's glove box note stayed in place behind protective glass. The Falcon Ridge Special remained beside it, sleek and low. Visitors often approached the race car first, then turned toward the farm truck when they saw the open engine bay. At the permanent exhibit opening, Margaret sat in the truck's passenger seat one final time before it went behind the barrier. She put both hands on the cracked dashboard. He drove me to nursing school in this, she said. I complained about the noise all the way. Wade stood outside the open door. He probably liked the noise. He said it was the sound of something refusing to be wasted. Claire recorded the sentence for the oral history, then closed the door gently. Near the end of the evening, Wade checked the oil cap and wiped one fingerprint from the fender. His shoulder moved without pain for the first time in years. Claire stood beside the display panel reading Lester's disposal letter. Do you think he knew what it would be worth? She asked. No. Then why save it? Wade looked from the race car to the work-worn truck, because value wasn't the question he was answering. The lights dimmed in the main gallery. The silver race car reflected them in long, clean lines. The old F-100 absorbed the light in faded blue patches. Beneath its hood, the Daytona engine remained bolted to the same mounts Lester had built in 1971. Claire switched on the small lamp aimed at the number pad. 6 digits, a dash, and the letter D appeared through the worn paint. Then she closed the hood halfway, leaving the engine visible but still inside the truck that had carried it through 55 ordinary years.